I am, of course, the real Monty Allen, and I am your crypto nerd. And today we have a special guest, Michael KryptoNurd. I hope I said that right. So stand by for just a minute, and we'll get going. All right, Michael, thank you for sitting tight, for waking up early on the West Coast there. And I got the last name right, didn't I?
You
or
did.
was it close?
No, you got it close. You got it close. I've got all sorts of variations on it, so you got pretty close.
KryptoNurd. Yeah. Okay, so I appreciate you joining us. Vesta Equity has been on my radar for quite a while. A lot of the Algorand community has been interested in this for quite a while. Anybody who really is interested in blockchain and real estate and how those two worlds are going to merge and how really it's going to change the way that investors deal with real estate. It's really an exciting time, I think, for your industry and mine too, and how those worlds are going to collide. For the audience who may not be as familiar with what you do and what Vesta Equity does or will do, could you give us just a brief background, a couple of minutes, and then we can dive into the topics?
Absolutely. So we took a look at the whole home equity financing market and said to ourselves, how can you apply blockchain into this space as a use case and essentially unbundle and decentralize the whole process that currently exists? Because if you take a look at it, it hasn't really changed in over 100 years. How you access the equity in your home in the 1950s is exactly the same way you access it in 2021. You have to either sell it or you have to get a loan. And there's a lot of inequities in that process. The banks are rigidly control the process. They make a substantial amount of money on it. And we said, it's not just about tokenizing home. It's about taking it to that next step. And how do you really create a truly decentralized financial marketplace? So we bring investors and homeowners together in what we call the Vesta property marketplace. And that's the point at which they transact. So we put them directly in touch. So if you're a homeowner, you can say, I want to tokenize $100,000 of equity in my home. You take that equity, you put it onto the marketplace, and then investors look at that and decide, is this home the home I want to invest in? Do I like this neighborhood? Do I like the geography? Do I feel the neighborhood is on the upside in terms of potential appreciation? And then we provide them the tools to transact. So they decide back and forth how much they're going to pay for the specific token they're buying. And is it going to be a little below the appraised value or above appraised value? And it really becomes a supply-demand issue. And that's what happens in marketplaces. So we're letting real capitalism take hold here and allowing people to determine their own future and how to manage their own wealth by using this platform.
Wow. So this is really fractionalized ownership. Let me ask you, how does blockchain make that process better versus just putting a lien on there or putting together some type of, a conglomerate that went in and purchased, equity, I guess?
Well, I think blockchain creates the infrastructure from which you can do this. And it allows you to automate a lot of the processes that would typically be paper driven. And you create an immutable record of that transaction, and where everything is, in the sense that if someone's purchased that token and then sold that token to someone else and so on and so forth, where it is in that process. And it enables something like this from the perspective of creating the digitization, and I'm dumbing it down, but the digitization of that asset, and then allowing the transaction of that asset to investors. You wouldn't have been able to do this, even 4 or 5 years ago. The technology simply wasn't there, and it enables it. And it's one of the reasons why we want to work with the Algorand platform, because we felt it was purpose-built as a business tool and a business solution for this very type of thing.
It really is. Their identity is in large part connected to traditional finance and just bridging the gap between traditional and blockchain and DeFi specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
You just mentioned something that I didn't realize, that the initial investment, me as an investor, let's say, or an accredited investor, somebody could go in and essentially kind of bid or decide for themselves how much these tokens or the tokenization of the home is worth, what their trading value is. Is that right? So that doesn't happen on the secondary. That happens initially.
It happens initially. It can happen on the secondary too, because it's basically the way the process starts. The starting point for the process is there's an official appraised value of the home, and that is the starting point by which the homeowner establishes his benchmark, and then the actual investor can take a look at it. And if you go to our website, you can see that a lot of the UI and the interface is very familiar. It looks like a real estate site. People get to see what the property looks like. They get to see the inspection report. They get to get an idea of the geography. We also partner with House Canary. We bring in a lot of external data that helps investors and homeowners make decisions about the value of their home. But that initial appraisal sets it. But in any marketplace, you're going to have the dynamics of the homeowner wants cash. The investor has the cash.
Right.
What deal do they end up striking? I'm assuming that in most markets, the homeowner will have to take a little below appraised value because they want to have their cash, and then that gives an extra upside to the investor. That's a normal dynamic that takes place. But you're going to have marketplaces where it's a bubbly, frothy real estate market where investors are going to be anxious to get in because they feel there's going to be a good short-term upside. And you're going to have that type of investor that goes to the platform too, where they're flipping their tokens frequently because they're in it for the short term. Then you're going to have guys who come into this who say, I want to buy into a solid neighborhood that appreciates 5% year over year. I'm going to hold that token for 10 years, and that's what I want to do, and it's part of my portfolio strategy. So it's really open as to what type of people are going to be participating and how they're going to react and how they're going to play on the marketplace. And it will have a lot to do with that specific market and that specific geography. If you look at a market like Toronto right now in Canada, it's frothy. Parts of Florida, frothy. And in other markets are not so frothy. Portland's probably not great right now.
Yeah.
Because of all the things that have gone on in that market, and the economy there is a little slow. So
you got to catch the cycles, right? The upswings and downswings.
Exactly. And then, of course, we're talking about a global market eventually, right? This just won't be focused on the U.S. We're going to expand out of the U.S. marketplace into across North America, into Europe, and parts of Southeast Asia as well. So someone essentially in Australia could invest anywhere in the world, and someone in the United States could sell their home to people globally as a percent, as an investment.
That brings up the topic then. So time frame and geographic location, where is this going to be rolled out first, and who can get involved?
Well, we're rolling it out in the U.S. first. We're specifically focused on specific areas in terms of our acquisition strategy, markets like California, the Southwest, Texas, and the Northwest, and then expanding out eastward across to the Eastern Seaboard, then up into the Northeast. But essentially, from our perspective, at this early stage, we were in conversations with quite a few property owners. They geographically dispersed throughout the U.S. We are finding some geographies seem to be more predominant, like Florida, Northwest, and California, where we're getting a lot of inbound inquiries on this. Investors, again, both in the U.S. and global. Right now, we could onboard an investor in Europe, onboard an investor in Southeast Asia. U.S. investors right now have to be accredited. And we're doing our launch October 1st. And we're actually reaching out to the community right now. We're actually in the process of vetting a number of property owners and investors to come on board as the first stage of this platform launch. And they can go to our website, sign up at the Let's Connect site, and we'll be reaching out to them to give them more information. There's a bit of a vetting process because in the first stages, we're looking for case studies. We're actually going to be waiving the 3.8% fee that we charge. We're going to be, covering the photography costs, the appraisal costs, and all that stuff, and the closing costs for the homeowners on this initial launch.
So for those folks who want to participate early on, it's really a bargain for them. So that they get some extra benefits of being, the first ones to kind of get the ball rolling. So I'm in Texas. So if I'm in Texas right now, a homeowner, I could go to this website and start that vetting process right now.
Yep, absolutely.
Excellent. All right.
Vetting process right now. And for investors, if you're an investor, there's never any charges on our site. Investors can go and transact, open an account. There's never any charges for them.
Fantastic. For the replay, folks, I'll make sure that I get all those links posted in the descriptions for you. So if anybody's interested, they could go take a look at that. Michael, I do have a question for you. So how does, from the investor standpoint, how does this different from a traditional REIT, or there's some other, tokenized housing, but they seem to be like individual projects? I'm not sure if you're familiar with a Lofty, and there's an index style project now that's not really necessarily blockchain related, but it's on Republic, who has raised money via the Algorand blockchain.
Oh yeah, I think the fundamental difference is that we're creating a marketplace, right? So if you were to take a REIT is an aggregation of various properties, so it's securitized, right? So you may have a mall in there, you could have a housing development project. They could be investing in. I've seen some
senior living.
I've seen some REITs include prop tech in there as well. So it's an aggregation of all those things into one security. So the way we're looking at this is that you get to build your own portfolio, essentially. You have 100% transparency and access to what we feel will one day be hundreds of thousands of properties, both income properties as well as regular properties, non-income properties across the globe. And you can build your own portfolio. You own $500 in a property in California, $500 a property in Florida, $500 property in Australia, Europe, and so on, and build your own portfolio. It's truly a decentralized platform. We're enabling people to completely control and have complete sort of like sovereignty over their own wealth and be able to have that decision and make those decisions of where they want to put their money. So that's the difference. And there are other tokenization platforms and solutions out there that, you know, there's big commercial properties that are being tokenized and people are getting ownership in those properties as well. I love that. I think it's great. Anything that's out there that's going to sort of unbundle the current financial infrastructure that exists globally, I think it's fantastic. So I'm applauding these guys. And I like to see the Lofties and those other guys come up as well, because we're the new guys on the block. It's a new breed of entrepreneurs and innovators that are going to be changing the whole space. And I think it's fantastic to see these guys using these technologies. And the space is big enough for a lot of competitors. And if I were the banks, I'd be the banks that I'd be nervous, because they're the ones that are going to be getting, you know, assaulted from all fronts right now. So.
From my perspective, I don't look at a Lofty versus a Vesta equity. I don't see that competition. What I see is blockchain versus the banks, DeFi versus traditional finance, and that I think is the bigger picture. And you're right. Rising waters float all ships. So I think there's more than enough for all the players who are here now.
Yeah, there's $98 trillion of residential assets in the United States,
and the U.S. alone. And you're also talking about international. So. Yeah.
It's massive.
So there's plenty of room. Yeah. Quick question for you. So there is a like tokenomics. Is this an ASA? Is this an NFT? How does the actual tokenization of a property work? Just, and not to get too technical, but just give us some generalities, maybe.
Yeah, it's we use the Algorand ASA tokenization standard, and it is going to be an NFT, non-fungible token. So the process is, from a user's perspective, homeowner's perspective, we've made this as simple and as easy to use as possible. It's a point-and-click environment on our website when we launch. And the reason we did that, you don't care how your phone works, you don't care how 5G works, you don't care how the camera works, you just know it works. And that's exactly the approach we've taken with our product, because we want people to feel comfortable. We don't want them to be overwhelmed with technology. And it will be a point-and-click environment. Wallet creation, everything is a point-and-click environment. Seamlessly easy to open up your account, and they'll point and click and they'll tokenize their home. And the data will appear in their wallet, and it'll show that their home is tokenized and that the asset's sitting in their wallet as a token NFT, tokenized.
Wow.
NFT. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, legally, is this a lien on the property? Is this a specific dollar amount that the lien is, or does somebody own a percentage of equity as the house fluctuates in value, your investment changes?
Use a deed of trust as the legal mechanism, and that's the actual element that gets tokenized, that deed of trust. That's the paper, and that's how it works essentially. So essentially, we do that to protect the investors as well. Then we as the sort of the holder of the deed of trust, for lack of a better word, are able to ensure that the insurance paid, taxes are paid. Same thing you have to do with a mortgage. You're still responsible for those things as the homeowner. And if anyone tries to do, we've always got the exception rule. If anyone tries to do anything nefarious with the property, obviously we can step in at that point in time and take action to protect the investor's rights. Investors have to have certain guarantees, but obviously at the end of the day, the market will drive price in terms of appreciation, or in some cases, I'm sure there could be some downsides in terms of values of homes. And your strategy as an investor, are you in it for the long term or short term?
Wow. So this scenario hadn't come across my mind yet, but if there is somebody out there who has a free and clear property and they wanted to tokenize their home, and so the only deed of trust against it would be, Vesta Equities, or, these investors, I guess, in essence. And if they didn't pay their property taxes, Uncle Sam or the state or whoever would come in, then Vesta is prepared to prevent a foreclosure type situation or handle that type of a scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a whole series of steps we can take to help the homeowner if there is an issue. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if push comes to shove, obviously we'd have to foreclose on the property to protect the investor's rights at that point.
Now, when this deed of trust goes in place, so I don't think, I'm not an attorney, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that would trigger a taxable event, because it's not like you haven't sold your house for, capital gains or that sort of thing.
No, there's the same mechanisms for capital gains that come into play when the whole house is actually sold.
Okay.
At that point in time. So no, there's no immediate capital gains. Now, the token holders, obviously, if they're selling their tokens for profit, are obviously responsible for their capital gains on those tokens.
Sure. Okay, got it. And there is a secondary market that you are facilitating for these transactions, or will these be able to be traded on, like an algo dex or some other, site?
Well, the goal is, first step, provide our secondary marketplace. The long-term goal is that these tokens can be traded anywhere.
So they're NFTs, I think you said initially, right? So somebody like a Yieldly, for instance, or I think Algodex is actually working on an NFT marketplace. There is a possibility that they could also end up there. I mean, there's no restrictions, right?
Yeah, I think that part of the market still needs to mature, and there still needs to be a little more thought put into it. But yeah, exactly, that's the long-term goal for us.
Wow. Okay. Now it's accredited investors only in the U.S. You mentioned earlier. Is there any plans to open that up to non-accredited investors?
Absolutely. We decided to launch first for accredited investors because from a regulatory perspective and to test the waters of everything, it made a lot more sense. But yeah, we intend to open this up to retail investors.
Wow. Okay. Let's say, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, do you think that this is this a paradigm shift moment? Is this model going to take over? Is this just going to be homeowners who want a quick buck? They used to take a home equity line of credit, or is this going to replace first lien mortgages in a bigger sense?
It has in my opinion, it has the potential. It has the potential to change what we consider to be home ownership as well, because technically speaking, someone who retains a percentage of their home with the residential rights could turn around and sell that to someone else. And you think about that could suddenly bring down the entry point to own a home, and it changes the dynamics of what we're typically considered to be a home ownership scenario. You don't have to go out now and get a whole mortgage. You don't have to be burdened by monthly payments. You don't have to have the risks of other penalties if you decide to exit quickly out of the mortgage. It's a very different dynamic. So it actually could allow people to actually own homes. We hear a lot now in the news about you'll be happy renting, right? We're telling a whole generation of millennials and Gen Zers, big chunks of our current population,
right,
you won't own a home, you'll be happy renting everything for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Well, who owns that asset at the end of the day? Someone owns that asset, and someone's benefiting from the wealth creation of that asset. So why not create a dynamic where people could actually enter the home market and actually own a percentage of a home and start building wealth, as opposed to sticking them into this paradigm where they're constantly renting and never building wealth. So yeah, I do think it's got the potential to change that dynamic in that space significantly. I do feel blockchain is a revolutionary technology, and is probably the type of technology that industry has been waiting for a long time. Because if you look at the financial services industry, they've leveraged technology to automate things and to make things faster and to create economies of scale for the banks. But not much has really been done for the consumer. And this is the first technology that could actually do something for the consumer and investors.
Wow. So if I am a homeowner, could I choose how much of my house is tokenized? And then do I have to immediately release all of those tokens, or can I sort of meter them out? Let's say I have plans to make an addition and I need 10,000 for the pool now, and I need 20,000 for the pool house later. Can I, meter that out?
You can meter it out. You can do what you want. If you have a $300,000 home and you want to access $100,000, you tokenize $100,000. You don't have to sell it all away. You can do 10 grand, 50 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand, do it as you wish.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing, because as I do home improvements, my mind is thinking my house actually improves in value. So I may have more equity to sort of tap in this way. Yeah. We've got a commenter who asked the question here. We've got a few minutes here, so we can get to that, I think. So Alfio wants to know, hey, what about homeowners who are working with new construction? Is it possible to pre-sell? Is that on the roadmap at all? Or would I have to wait until the construction is done? Any plans for that? Or
it's on the roadmap. obviously that's a market we want to take a look at. So
could very well eliminate or replace something like a reverse mortgage. Has that market been tapped, or have you looked at that?
but they're in our sights, I can tell you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's one of the markets that's probably got the most inequities. It's an aggressive market. They target older citizens who require capital for whatever reasons, and the terms are very, very aggressive. They foreclose on the smallest things, and at the end of the day, it's not a great deal for the homeowner. So yeah, they're right in our sights, and it's a very fragmented market. There's about 300 reverse mortgage companies in the States, so you got a lot of localized businesses as well as a few national shops, but they're right in our sights.
Yeah, and they have a history of or perception anyway of being, somewhat predatory, and those loans in general just don't have a good reputation. So I could see something like this replacing that and being better for everyone involved, better for the investor, better for the client and homeowner as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we've got to wrap things up here. I wish we had more time. We're gonna have to do this again, but I want to give you one last, the last word here, so to speak. Anything else you want to get out to the Algorand community, the family in general, about Vesta Equity, and what's coming next?
Well, I mean, what we're really doing is we're really appreciating the support we're getting from everyone in the Algorand community. And, again, that launch to us is really, really critical. And the more properties we can get on, the more people we can vet for October 1st would be great. So go to our website, click the Let's Connect button, fill out the form there, and we'll be in touch with you. We actually have lots of conversations with a lot of the people that are signing up on our website to talk to them, get their insights, get what they want to do. We've had some great inspiring stories from people how they want to use the platform, and both income properties and non-income properties is what we're looking for, and investors as well.
Wow, fantastic. Michael, it's been a pleasure. I will post all of those links in the description here. That's all the time we have. We're going to have you back on when you can speak a little freer, because I can tell there's some things reading between the lines that you're working on. You just can't mention yet. So when that happens.
I'll do, definitely.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks everyone for watching. Stay tuned next time, and stay safe out there.
Thank you. Take